Profile share via email report story. Luffy woke up to the smell of breakfast that morning. He also woke up on a bed he never had the luxury of sleeping on in this ship. The bed was soft and so were the pillows. Definitely wasn't the hammock he usually always snoozes in. When he fully opened his eyes, wiping the sleep away, he realized he was in the women's quarters, specifically on Nami's bed. During the night, he's pretty sure he was holding onto something. The spot next to him was empty though, nobody there. He frowned a bit. On one of her stands was a clock which read 7 a.m. He got up from his position and sat on the bed with both legs and arms crossed. He hummed, thinking why she was up so early. While thinking, food popped up in his head and he realized he couldn't think with an empty stomach. He raced to the door and slammed it open. Not a crewmate on deck, surely because they were at the kitchen eating Sanji's food. He then sped towards the kitchen's door, ready to throw himself inside and attack the cook to let him eat already. But he couldn't do what he wanted because it wasn't Sanji cooking, it was Nami. Her head spun around, catching her captain's eyes. He stood at the doorway, a bit taken back, and then fully closed the door. The navigator eyes widened at the man in front of her. "You're not supposed to be here yet," she simply told. He approached her, walking as his sandals hit the wooden floor. He waited behind her and then peeked to see what she was making. Luffy celebrated in his head when seeing the making of omuris. He poked Nami's cheek, his way of catching her attention, and she turned to him. She blinked, not thinking he'd get so close. Her red face made him laugh and said, "You're the best, Nami." He merrily made his way to one of the many seats the long table had and patiently stayed put, not causing any ruckus. "He's not rushing me or anything," she giggled while putting the egg on the glass plate. Completely different to how he treats Sanji. She took the plate off the counter and placed the dish in front of him. She handed him the proper utensils. "I'm not Sanji or anything, so I couldn't make you a monstrous amount of omuris." Luffy stabbed the fork into the egg and took his first bite. His bright smile told Nami she did well. She took the seat across from him and watched her captain happily eat away. That moment, she noticed he wasn't rushing to eat like with the macarons. With Sanji's cooking, he'd usually finish each dish with one gulp. Seeing him take the time to eat her food made her happy, truly. As she contently stared at the stabs her captain gave to the meal, she wondered about last night. Of course, she could have easily punched the rubber man out of there if she really didn't want him to stay. But she let him. Nami realized she's been making decisions that oppose her usual thinking. Take what Usopp asked. Instead of normally punching him to avoid having that talk, she let it happen. Last night wasn't an exception either. He just walked in and slept beside her. Again, she let it happen. What changed? What made her change? Who knows? "Hey, Nami," he placed the knife and fork he received onto the plate. "When are we hitting the next island?" She closed her eyes for a brief moment. "Before evening, most likely. The island accepts pirates, so that's something to look forward to." The island was really just a plain town, living a normal life and letting pirates in whenever there was something they needed. But she's sure that the town has met rude crews before and wondered how difficult it must be to deal with them. Once again, last night's event lingered onto her mind, desiring to know what was Luffy's intentions. Asking him wouldn't hurt, and technically she did ask him yesterday already, but he'll probably just give the same answer. It won't hurt to just ask. "Luffy." His gaze shifted to her. "Why'd you come yesterday?" He left her eyes for a moment before meeting it again to plaster on a smile. "I just wanted to be with you." The navigator sat still. That was a different response. It wasn't, "I wanted to see you," this time. Promoted stories. You'll also like. Youngest crewmate. One Piece. 1.7K62. What if Zoro wasn't Luffy's first crewmate? A young girl in need of love and a family and a certain rubber team cross paths. Reader as a kid, only platonic relatio. I Need You More. 23.6K320. In the wake of their new victory in Wano, time spilled into the hands of Luffy and Nami. Recognition of their silent feelings wailed in their hearts like aches, kraken. 3D2YA One Piece fanfic. 372K6.2K. Luffy stumbles upon Nami by chance on a small island after the crew was separated at Sabayati Archipelago. The two decide to train together, but then comes the warm, weird. My One Piece Book 1 11.6K278. Monkey D. Luffy, a cheerful, carefree young man from East Blue wearing a straw hat set sail on a small boat carrying the biggest dream of finding the One Piece. He's R. Canyon Moon, One Piece. 53.1K 1.2K. In which a girl that's terrible at baking, but great with knives meets a bunch of non-pirate pirates. Or in which a girl is trying to find her family and finds different. Seastone, Luffy X Reader. 82.8K 2.5K. Just a Luffy X Fem. Reader. Takes place at Impel Down and will be using stuff from the actual show, so if you're not past episode 400 you might not want to read. I Won't D. My Captain's Soft Side, Luffy X Nami. 6K79. As Nami is working in her room, she decides to take a small break, so she walks out and looks at the sea. After a few minutes she looks at the place Luffy is usually sitting. ... Baka, what are you getting so happy for? It's practically the same thing. Luffy stretched his arms across the table, his fingers barely touching Nami's. She hadn't noticed that, and to his dismay, she put her hands under the table to fiddle with the bracelet Nojiko had given her. The captain tapped his fingers, pretending he didn't fail to hold her hand. Nami, we're friends, right? The navigator gently smiled at the rubber man, of course. He averted his eyes, gazing over at the kitchen's window. What if I told you I didn't want to be friends? Nami couldn't react, for he got up from his seat to greet the reindeer. Ahoy, Chopper. I feel like I haven't seen you in forever. She. Robin warmly told her captain, good morning, and put the doctor down to play with the straw hat. Oh, I thought breakfast was ready. Navigator San, where's Cook San? But she didn't reply to the older woman's question. Her body was stiff, the intensity of the atmosphere just seconds ago still lingered around her. His serious glare, his hockey, leaving her stuck in place. How did he do it? Speaking with such force and then acting like a child the next. The confusion was too much for her. How is she supposed to know if he was joking or not? She deeply thought about his words. That wasn't random. That meant something. Luffy has prioritized his Nakama's safety and cherishes friendships. So when hearing something like, I don't want to be friends anymore, coming from him, it stung. Badly. Even after she stole his ship, left his crew to go back to her home in which she was deep in debt, he still insisted for her to join because he still thought of her as a friend after all that. Was it because of her attitude? Could it be because of her bossy personality that he refuses to be close with such a person? Yeah, she was bitchy, but not lately. What did she do that made him snap? She didn't understand. She just couldn't. It was so unsettling that her captain, Luffy, had a problem with her that it resulted to cutting off their friendly relationship. And the fact she didn't want to stop being friends with such an amazing, caring guy hurt her more. Robin called for her once more, but she ignored it. She got up, stormed out of the kitchen, kicked Zoro from sleeping any longer, and slammed the door of the women's quarters with power that Frankie thought it would need some fixing. The crew, with the exception of Sanji, watched that unfold and noted to themselves to stay away from the tangerine lover and do her the favor of not pissing her off today. Brook sipped his cup of tea slowly. I have a feeling today's going to be a bad day. Usopp nodded in agreement. It's okay, though. We'll be landing on an island soon and we can escape her wrath then. Robin, too, left the kitchen, wondering if she should follow after her. But like past cases, she knew it was best to leave her be for a short while before confronting her. Frankie walked up to her with a smile. G-morning. She gave her arm to the cyborg and wrapped it around his own arm. Good morning to you, too. That witch. Zoro scanned the deck for a certain straw hat and when he spotted one next to Usopp and Chopper, he called for his captain. Oi, Luffy. He turned around with owl eyes. What did you do to her last night to make her this pissed off? Usopp couldn't stop rambling last night about Luffy being in the women's quarters alone with Nami whenever the cook left the men's quarters. The long-nosed knew himself that Sanji knowing will give the rest of the men on the ship no sleep that night. He struggled getting up for a moment, his side hurting from the full force kick she gave. Her kicks were never too powerful if she was only trying to wake him up, but this one was. And he was sure that upset kick was to only let out her anger on him that possibly was caused by the straw hat. He rubbed his chin. Last night, she didn't seem too mad when I came in. He clapped his hands when he remembered. Oh, I slept with her. But, that was all. He frowned. She was even happy in the kitchen so I don't really know what's wrong with her. Sanji emerged from the men's quarters with his leg already on fire. You what? It seemed that the cook was the last one to be awake. How dare you do such a thing with Nami Swan? And with a jump, he was in the air, heading straight down to where Luffy stood to land a fiery blow on the rubber man's head. Luffy quickly took off his straw hat, making sure it wouldn't catch on fire. Come here, you shitty captain. Frankie gaped. And no way. He looked over at Chopper and Usopp who were yelling frantically about it being the end of the world. Don't tell me those were his true intentions. The tea that was about to be swallowed by the skeleton was spat out of his mouth by the truly shocking news. Hearing that was quite eye-bulging. Though I don't have any to begin with. Yo-ho-ho-ho. And Robin, still attaching her arm around her partner's, sighed in disappointment at the men's reactions. Even Zoro stiffened. She was surprised such loud racket didn't make Nami storm out here to knock them all out to keep quiet. As Luffy was about to hide behind her, knowing Sanji would never hurt a lady, she let him do so and tripped the blonde cook with her Hana powers, two hands coming out of the floor, grabbing onto his legs and forcing him to fall. This way, Luffy can clarify what he meant without being killed. Luffy-kun, about what you said. She let go of Frankie's arm and turned towards her younger captain. As suspected, Luffy didn't realize that was such a big deal based on the confusion plastered on his face. His poor choice of words got the whole crew stirred up. You say you slept with Nami, so what did you two do exactly in bed? Frankie, along with the other men, blushed furiously at her bold question. But also were grossed out, not wanting to hear about Luffy's tactics in bed. The captain had no idea why everyone was acting so weird today. We talked and talked. Before we knew it, we were both fast asleep. The archaeologist grinned, already seeing that coming. The rest of the crew didn't seem to realize that. So in other words, you slept with her. He nodded. All of the crew walked up to their captain, except the older woman, their eyes covered by the shade. Luffy peeked from behind her to see them all approach and decided to reveal himself. He shouldn't have, for they all gave the rubber man several chops to the head for phrasing his words in a way that'll easily be misunderstanding. But Luffy tends to do that a lot. It confuses and hurts people in the end. Ow, he yelped, rubbing the many bumps on him. Well, that didn't help at all. Nami's still pissed and we'll be doomed if we don't figure it out. Usopp sighed. The rest of the crew agreed with his statement, not looking forward to the rest of the day. They were well familiarized with how Nami operates, and even a small glance at her will cause a storm. They also knew the one that can really kill the navigator's temper is Robin, so they all looked over to her as the solution to the problem. She shook her head with a smile. It's best not to approach her right now, even for myself. They all sighed and continued on with their day, hoping she wouldn't come out of the women's quarters and punch anyone she sees. Frankie was just about to leave his partner to let her spend her morning time watering the flowers, but was stopped by her calling. Frankie-san, before you go. She stared at Luffy, Usopp, and Chopper. After what you told me yesterday, it's only right but to remind Captain San of his actions so he understands. Her eyes looked up at her lover. Navigator San will end up being hurt if he keeps acting this way. He agreed by nodding. Usopp bro will do a better job at yelling at him. And when she flashed a smile at him, he made his way to the three youngest crewmates who were at each other's faces spatting insults at one another. When he got closer to them, he realized Luffy and Usopp were arguing and Chopper was only yelling at them to stop their bickering. Please stop, you're too loud. Nami might rush out here and knock us out. The long nose yelled out. Good. Luffy deserves her hellish beatings. No, I don't. Luffy grabbed his same-age friend's cheek and stretched it out, causing him slight pain. Why are you so upset? I'm not lying. You're telling the truth. Then why did you hesitate to answer when Frankie and I asked you about it last night? Usopp was now pinching his captain's arm while using his other free hand to remove the rubber man's hand off his cheek. Because, you made me confused that time. But I thought hard about it and I know she knows. A small stutter on the meat lover's part. Frankie came into the picture, seeing the reindeer, that grew to man size, struggle to keep the two apart. The shipwright didn't mind giving him some assistance. How are you fighting already? Not Supa. With his metal arms, he motioned it under Usopp's armpits to lift him off the ground, the coward's flailing arms unable to hit his captain. Chopper did the same, but since Luffy ate the Gomu Gomu fruit, he was able to stretch his right arm to hit his other crewmate's face. Usopp couldn't do anything but scowl since Frankie did a great job keeping a fair distance between the fighting two. Seriously, calm down. Usopp's flailing around stopped after a hard flick to the head. What the hell were you two arguing about anyways? Luffy pointed an accusing finger at the sharpshooter. He called me a liar. Isn't that funny coming from Usopp? The insult angered him. Shut up. I have the right to call you that after the obvious lie you told. Listen, brats. Frankie went closer to Chopper and Luffy only to also flick his captain's forehead. We won't know anything if you don't just downright say it. Chopper silently nodded. Usopp threw a frown his captain's way and murmured a, fine. Seeing how he gave up attempting to get out of Frankie's grip and was less angry than seconds ago, the cyborg released his crewmate and let him talk freely. Chopper thought it was fair to let Luffy go as well, and the two, though clearly upset at each other, behaved better. Remember, we asked this idiot if Nami was even aware she had a romantic relationship with him. Frankie thought oh boy when hearing Usopp, already knowing where this was going. The conversation between the younger ones all made sense. And he didn't even bother to answer us. Well, I asked him again, and instead of him ignoring the question, he actually had the nerve to say, "Yes, she does." So I called him a liar. The rubber man scowled and gazed over at his shipwright. "But I'm not lying. You believe me, right, Frankie?" He asked the same thing to Chopper, but unfortunately he hinted of being on Usopp's side. Usopp laughed at that. He obviously agrees with me. Instead of still being angry, he had a prideful grin on, looking as if he won the argument. "Luffy, give up and just quit the act. Why do you even want to pretend being with Nami like that in the first place? Whatever the reason is, it's best to just admit the truth. Plus, think about how Nami would feel, or, worse, what she'll do when hearing what you're telling people." His words came to a stop when a hand covered his mouth. He met Luffy's serious look. Again, he's been acting real serious lately, hasn't he? Luffy's eyes were then locked to the ground. What? Usopp asked, his voice a bit muffled. Backslash dot. The rubber man's left hand was then placed onto his crewmate's shoulder, his right hand following the same action. Both hands held it tightly, but not tight enough to crush his shoulders. Luffy, first, looked at Frankie before looking at Usopp. But it didn't matter because the coward purposely avoided looking at his glare. Poor Chopper watched the scene in confusion. Usopp, Frankie, both crewmates perked up. "I am dating Nami. And she does know." His emphasis on those two important words weren't missed. The last thing he had to say would also be engraved onto their minds. "And I'm not always stupid. I know what I'm doing." After making his words clear, he released his grip and walked away, his straw hat hanging on the back of his neck while heading up to the kitchen where Sanji was sure to be cooking breakfast. Nami's meal was amazing, but all his talking made him hungry. Chopper turned around to see Brook taking his last sip of tea while smiling ever so. Frankie and Usopp awkwardly stood there, taken back once again. The musician chose to comment. "Straw Hat Kun sure has acted different these days, huh?" The long nose weakly chuckled. "That's for sure. But oh, you heard all that." Of course, I wasn't too far away. And indeed he wasn't. He was practically behind the reindeer. Luffy-kun didn't seem to realize his surroundings and said that out of the blue. Even Zoro could have heard him. The swordsman was on the other side of the deck, eyes closed, hands thrown behind head, katanas at his side, sleeping soundly. Frankie didn't bother looking at the green head. "Nah, he can sleep through anything. I'm sure he wouldn't wake up to hear you two argue." Chopper's stomach then grumbled that moment. "We're all kind of hungry, huh?" He opened up his stomach to see empty cola bottles. "I don't want to face Straw Hat, to be honest." The musician, doctor, and sharpshooter sighed in agreement, unable to head to the kitchen at the moment. In the distance, Zoro choked on air. His crewmates were wrong to think he was sleeping through that. Luffy just calling out two names with such unnecessary force woke him up, really. And oh, was their captain loud when he said that, too. He hoped Sanji and Robin, who he saw the both enter the kitchen together, didn't hear his words. So many questions swarmed his mind about his confession. His attitude towards Nami these days made sense now. Holy shit. He whispered to himself. Our idiotic captain likes Nami. He opened his eyes, staring up at the cloud that resembled a skull. Holy shit. Blank, underscore, blank. I can't believe I'm completely ignoring my old works. Maybe inspiration hasn't been found for those yet. I sure as hell am passionate about my Kuroko no Basket fanfic though. I practically have chapters planned out in my head. As for my Sasusaku story, that will come to an end but likely not soon. A pretty short chapter this was, but it's okay. IK Luffy's character in this story can be read as OOC, but really I want to focus on how this rubber man isn't an idiot all the time like he tends to show, and that he's really intelligent when he wants to be. I want to do a thing which Mugiwara does, something his crew wouldn't expect. This whole, I'm dating Nami, thing being the case, because come on, how can Luffy just make that up? I'll be working on my old works now because one of them hasn't been updated in over 6 months, so eek. Wish me luck. Where stories live. Discover now.